Good day, aficionados. Winston Goodfellow here. We're doing another one of our podcasts on the road. This time we've gone pretty far from home. We're actually up in Wisconsin, Pewaukee, if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I'm here with Matt Backhaus, the proprietor of Streetwork Exotics. I've known Matt for quite a while. What intrigued me was two things. We came up here to do a fantastic Lamborghini shoot where we do a deep dive into how did Lamborghini come to the point of the new Revuelto. And then also I've known Matt because of his Pebble Beach quality restorations. Good day, sir.
Thank you.
How did you get, were your parents involved in the car business, or was it just a passion you picked up as a kid?
Well, that's interesting because I really feel like my desire from cars, I know it came from my mother. And it's kind of, I'll go all the way back to the very origins of me. My father was a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and this would have been 1969. And I was born in September of 1969. And he was sent to Vietnam shortly after that. Unfortunately, he didn't make it back from there.
There were a number of those. Yep.
My mother was very young at the time, 20, 21 years old.
Yikes, yeah.
Happened, so she was devastated, of course. She had me as an infant to take care of. And at the time, they would get some sort of compensation from the government, when their husbands wouldn't come home. And she took that money and she bought a 71 Plymouth Roadrunner.
Oh, that's too cool.
4-speed. And we lived in Iowa, and she used to drive between Des Moines to Omaha, where my father's parents were in Omaha. So she'd drive between Des Moines to Omaha in that 71 Roadrunner. And there's pictures of me in the back seat, with ice cream, whatever, just a little boy. And she would brag to me when I was a kid about how fast she could do this trip in this car. And that kind of so I always had this Roadrunner in my head,
So your mom was basically a car chick.
Yeah, I don't know if she grew up horses.
Okay.
She was really into horses. My grandparents, her parents, they had some horses, but I think she just at the time when that happened, she's like she just wanted to make herself happy, and that's what she wanted, and let that car go. She remarried, when I was about 5, and she let that car go, and then there was nothing else. It never happened. By the time I was 12, 13, there was no other cars, But I particularly remember when I was about 12 or 13, the stepfather at the time was a state trooper, and one of the troopers under him was a Mopar fanatic. And was a mechanic, and on his off time would go in his garage and tinker with his Roadrunner and stuff. And my mother's like, I got to go see that car. It was a 69 Roadrunner. And she's like, you got to come see this car, Matt. And I went, and I was just oh my God, this is the coolest car I ever saw. And, we lived in rural Iowa, so you didn't see, even though this was in the early mid 80s, you just didn't see a lot of these cars running around because, we were just in rural Iowa. I grew up on a horse farm. So,
yep.
So what happened then is I loved this car so much that I was like, I'd start drawing pictures of what I wanted my cars to look like. And,
as we did back in the day.
Yeah. And I remember I drew a dump truck or a wrecker truck.
I was going to say, dude, if you said a dump truck.
No, like a record truck. And I was like, I'm going to have my own business. And I'd write all my names of the businesses on the doors and stuff. And that's kind of what really got me fired up for it. And then when I was in high school, I wanted to get my own car. And, my stepfather wasn't going to help me. I was on my own. So I went out and got a job, and I started in a body shop when I was in high school, wet sanding cars. It was called Curly's Body Shop. It was in a little farm community in Iowa. We'd be working on pickup trucks, maybe fixing a little rust spot on an old pickup truck or whatever. But that's how I got started.
But how great of a name, Curly's Body Shop.
And he had big gold curly hair. Big, thick glasses like Bubbles in Trailer Park Boys,
How old was he?
Curly at the time was probably in his early 40s. He seemed
Okay.
like an old man to me at the time, but
course.
you know, now that I'm 53, you know,
Well, and also I'm thinking of a dude named Curly. He's not going to have this, you know.
yeah, no, not Curly from the Three Stooges.
Yeah. So you did you go to college? Did you do any type of thing like that, or did you just follow your
I
automotive
learned on
passion?
the job because when I started, you know, I Curly identified me as being pretty good for not having any, you know, training or anything. And over a couple of years of working there part-time when I was in high school, you know, I was getting to the point where I was doing some of these just repairs by myself, all the way just even painting them. And, you know, I could only work there part-time because I was in school, but in the summers I'd work there pretty much full-time. And then I was able to buy my own car, which was a 73 Plymouth Roadrunner at the time.
Do you consider yourself a Mopar guy, or did you just kind of go in that direction?
Well, I think that my mother drove me in that direction with the Mopars. The Roadrunners just got in my head, you know. And then I started getting pretty into it, you know, the cars and the hot rodding and all that stuff. And so I started getting into everything. I really like everything. You know, I my own self, I have Camaros, and you know, I got some Roadrunners, as you saw when you've been up here, and you know, I got some newer cars, and you know, I've even got some Mercedes and things like that. So I really like a big variety of stuff.
How did you do the jump from being a part-time kid to owning Streetwork Exotics?
Well, that's the tough question there, and it's a long story, but I'll try to condense it. I jumped into the restaurant business after being in the car business until I was about 24 or 5.
What took you over there?
Well, that's why I say it's kind of a long story. I at the time, again, I'm still in rural Iowa. And if I wanted to work on cars and do body shop, you go to a collision repair shop. There weren't any restoration shops or stuff like that, you know. So I was working in collision repair, and I worked at a place called Benevetti Chevrolet in Granger, Iowa. Small Chevy dealer, great family-owned, wonderful people, and loved working there. But the grind of doing collision repair really wasn't that fun. It's not about cars. Like you think it'd be about cars, but it's not. It's just about work, and it was hard work. And at the time, I remember this was probably about 1990, 91 when I was working at Benevetti Chevrolet, and I was doing quite well. I particularly remember I made $45,000 that year.
Back in the day, that was good money. That's 30 years ago.
It was not bad money,
Particularly out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
You're out on the coast where I grew up, different story, but out here,
right.
Oh yeah.
And I was doing quite well at that job, but it was tough, you know. And then on the weekends and evenings, I had a shop at my grandparents' house where I'd have a, you know, old car I'd be working on my own here and there, and I still had some Roadrunners, you know, I was buying and tinkering with. And back then you could buy them fairly decent and cheap.
Oh yes.
They weren't rusty and rotten like they are now. And so I was always kind of tinkering with that stuff. But I really got tired of the grind with the auto body stuff. So I was like, God, I just want to do something else. And I just got a bartending job. I was like, I'm just going to bartend for a while. I'm going to find myself. What do I want to do with my life? And I excelled at this bartending job. I guess the owner of the restaurant really thought I was, you know, somebody that could help him out. So he brought me into the management of the restaurant there. And I started running shifts for him and stuff. And Garcia's Mexican Restaurant. There's still one in Phoenix, by the way. If you ever want to stop by.
Nice. That's right. We're getting this behind the scenes. And Lee's over there giving us the nod too.
This particular one was in Des Moines, Iowa. And I worked there for a while, and I was like, okay, well, I think I kind of like this restaurant management thing. It was a lot of fun, had a lot of perks, especially if you know, like to have fun outside of work. You'd get to meet lots of friends and have fun with the staff and stuff. And so that was fun for a while. And that job brought me here to Wisconsin in probably like 1997.
Okay.
So I was in the restaurant business for like 5 years. Brought me here, 5, 6 years. Brought me here. I was up here at this restaurant. I helped them open it. It was brand new. And it didn't really work out for me at this restaurant. I was starting to realize that, okay, I made $45,000 a year doing body work in 1991 or 2.
Yep.
Now I'm making $50,000 a year as a restaurant manager, and they got me now working 60 hours a week, and it just wasn't fun anymore. And it didn't work out for me. And the day that I left, I separated with that restaurant. I was like, I'm not going to work in this business anymore. This isn't right for me. And I'm probably about 27 years old. And I've been living here in Wisconsin for about 6 months. So I'm driving home the same path I always drive home for 6 months. And this one particular day, I drove by this old building, old dilapidated, old brewery of a building. And I saw a sign on it that said, we do Cobra replicas or something like that. And I happened to have a Cobra replica that I bought. I didn't build it.
Yep.
I bought it from a guy, beat on it, drove it around. It wasn't a ton of money, but it was a lot of fun. I was like, well, I like Cobra replicas. I'm just going to stop by here and see what's going on here. And when I went in there, I started talking to the gentleman that was in the place. And he was like, boy, I could just really use some help. And, well, I guess I'm available. I just left the restaurant. So I started helping him. Doing body work, little metal work. He was working on a little bit of hot rod stuff, like maybe some custom stuff. And
So what were his Cobra replicas?
there were none in there. There wasn't a single one in there.
Outstanding.
Yeah, he was just he just was. I think he had done some in the past, and he wanted to do more. It didn't really work out with this guy and me because he wasn't really able to pay me much. You know, he just didn't have a real strong business or whatever. Well, he moved out of that building, and he was sharing it with another gentleman. His name was Bob Dempsey, and I kind of consider him a mentor in this business. Bob was running I would call it a foreign car service, but he really specialized in British cars.
Okay.
Lots of Triumphs,
Yep.
you know, MGs, those kind of things.
Because they were popular and still quite affordable back then.
Right. I mean, they still are.
Yeah, that good point.
They still are. I guess he was working on all these cars, and I just asked him, I was like, hey, can I just come down here and rent a stall or two from you? You know, just to, putz around or do whatever. He's like, sure, go ahead. And I knew him already, obviously, because, we were in the building with him. And so I rented a space for him. I remember he only charged me $150 a month. Bob wasn't the best businessman. Fabulous mechanic, not the greatest businessman. But I went into that stall and I started just tinkering around with some of my stuff or whatever. And Bob's like, hey, this guy that I'm working on is Jaguar. It was an XKE, it was a Series 2 XKE. He wants to get some paint work done on his firewall and this, that, and the other. You want to do that? I was like, sure, I'll do that. I was set up to do some paint work there in the shop. And so I did it for him. And the guy that owned the car was like, that's really good. You want to do the whole car? I was like, sure. So I took it on. I never expected it to be a business, right? I just started doing this car. And another friend or mentor named John Ling, I think you know.
Back to the 1970s. Yes.
He came down to the shop. I think he was living in California at the time. Maybe he was moving back to Wisconsin. I can't really remember how it
floated
worked.
around.
Yeah. He came into the shop, which he used to own several years before.
So that's when it was Silverstone.
Correct. And now Bob, one of his old employees, was still there, Bob Dempsey. And he came down to see Bob and was talking to him or whatever. And I think John bought a Lancia Flaminia.
Sounds up his alley.
Yeah, I think it was a convertible. And he was bringing it down. And he's like, wow, it looks like you're doing pretty good work. Would you like to paint my Flaminia? I was like, sure. I'll paint it. I didn't know anything about alloy body cars at the time, by the way. Not a thing. There were some holes in the car that needed to be welded up. I didn't know how to do it. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn. I had to go out and buy a welder and practice. And
so is this where Bob came in handy as a mentor that he was
yes,
teaching?
Bob would say, well, I'll show you how to aluminum weld. And he would show me stuff all the time. I was never a mechanic. So anytime there were mechanical questions, I just go to him, and he was very helpful. He was a good friend of mine. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years back, but he was a very, very good friend of mine.
So it sounds like your specialty was really painting and body work.
That's what I started doing. And it's funny, when I started, most of my work would come from Bob's clients because they'd bring their MG or their TR4 or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, I didn't know you had somebody in here doing body work. Oh, my, got some scratches on my fenders or whatever. And I'd say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll fix that. Oh, my God, the work was so cheap. It was so cheap. I could hardly even rub 2 nickels together. You know, I'd only get like $300 for repairing a guy's, scratched fender or something. And so it was hard. And I stayed persistent, though. And I think the big break came to get Streetworks rolling, where I painted a car for John. I did the Jaguar. John was always kind of bringing in small stuff. He's always kind of having cars. But I think the real break came when John referred a gentleman he knew with a Easel Griffo to have us, have me restore it. And I didn't know really how to restore the car electrically or mechanically. So I hired somebody to come help me, who came from the shop that I worked at previously.
Yep.
And he came and he helped me, and we restored this car in 6 months, if you can believe it or not.
That's impressive.
And at the time, I was just in awe of how nice it was. I was like, I can't believe how nice a job we did on this. And everybody thought so. John thought it looked great. And it's just, I just couldn't believe how good a job we did.
All right, I got to go Griffo geeky for just a moment. Series 1 with the open headlights or Series 2 with the covered headlights? Chevy or Ford engine?
It was a Series 1 with the 350 horse. No,
Okay.
327, 350 horse.
Yep.
Again, I'm just enamored with how beautiful this car is. Oh my God, nobody could do a car better than this. We're real hot shit. Pardon my language. So John's like, hey, they're having a class out at Pebble Beach. It was a Giugiaro class. This was 2002, 2003. I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, anyhow.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, because that probably would have been one of my classes at Pebble.
It was. You were the head judge. That was the first time I had met you.
Okay.
John had spoken of you, and I met you, and you won't probably remember this with everything that goes on with cars, but we took the car to Pebble, and we were going to do the tour. I can tell a lot of funny stories about what went on with this tour, but we'll keep it simple.
We don't have to keep it simple.
Well, the one thing I was going to go to is I remember Mark, the owner of the car, was going to drive it.
Bang! Now I remember the car.
Yellow.
Yes. Yeah, the dude was an architect.
Yes.
Got it.
Man, that's a memory. Holy cow.
Yeah. No. Oh yes. Boy, that dude was freaking sweating bullets.
He is very high-strung individual.
That's
great
putting
guy.
It mildly.
Great guy. He's actually done some work for me in architecture since then.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about this story. This is freaking great.
So I'll do the whole story with the car, but boy, did I learn a lot at Pebble Beach that year. Streetworks is now 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
I'm at Pebble Beach. I took my own truck and trailer out there all by myself. I drove it from here out to Monterey before GPS. Didn't know where the hell I was going, just looking at maps and plotting out courses, and drove out there myself.
First time to the West Coast, I take it.
I had been in California before, but that was on a jet.
Yeah. So it's just like, okay, I'm going in that direction.
Yeah, right. And, the mountains and all that stuff were pretty scary pulling a car. And, at the time I didn't have shop insurance and all that crap, But I did it all by myself and got out there, and we got the car out, and we're going to do the tour. We get out there early, and Mark, he's very fastidious. We're polishing that car for the tour and wiping down the Baranis.
So the tour at Pebble Beach is on Thursday prior to Pebble Beach. They do a 50-mile tour around the Monterey Peninsula, and it's done for 2 reasons. Number 1, to show cars at Pebble Beach aren't trailer queens. Number 2, it's give back to the Monterey Peninsula because not everyone can afford the ticket price. So you can go see the cars at Pebble Beach when they're running around the peninsula for free. There's no ticket to do that. You just go and enjoy. So you're getting ready.
And there's really nothing better than seeing them in motion.
Oh,
seeing them sit still on Pebble Beach lawn is great, but
nice,
seeing them in motion.
Seeing them in oh yeah, and it's typically 90+% of the participants do the tour.
Right. Well, the year I went out there, I think the tour might have been fairly new at the time.
It was. We brought that in. If memory serves me correctly, it was right around 98 is when that came
because I would say only about 30% of the participants did it that year. It was very, very small tour. Now you're right. You go out there now, it's like, oh,
Yep.
You got pre-staging lanes.
You know
and,
something, you're right, because it was maybe 50% or something, but it was not like it is now.
and it was an unstructured tour then too. It was just kind of like, this is where we're going, get there. Now it's very structured.
Oh boy, can I tell you some wild stories about the tour? Continue, please.
But I remember, so I'm going to ride with Mark. He's going to drive the tour, and I'm going to ride with him. It's just me and Mark out there, by the way, nobody else. He flew out there. And here's what I remember. Oh, we got this beautiful car. And I remember sitting in the passenger seat, and there was a Maserati Ghibli Spider was the car in front of us. I didn't really pay it much mind. I didn't even know what it was at the time, by the way. I didn't even know what I was looking at.
Boy, has that changed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I remember we're sitting on a hill behind him, a slight hill, and he, the Maserati Ghibli turns right to go up, and I look down the side of that car, and I've never seen a car so flat and straight in my life. I was like, whoa, I can't believe this. I don't even know how that's possible. And this car was red. So in order to be straight and perfect, it had to be pretty straight and perfect.
Perfect, yeah,
Our car was yellow. Yellow can hide a lot of sins.
Agreed.
And I was I couldn't stop raving about how nice this car was. And
Welcome to the big leagues.
Right, exactly. And now, so I walk out on the lawn at Pebble Beach on Sunday morning, and I walk out. And all the cars are like this, by the way, But I was so in awe of how good this Maserati Ghibli was, and it had Hawaii plates on it. Somebody shipped it over from Hawaii, that I had to find out who did this car.
Yep.
That's a little distracting.
Oh, it's absolutely marvelous. We're hearing this fantastic V8
drag race or something going on behind us.
Yes.
So anyway, I come up to the show field. I just go up to the car. I'm just a kid. I'm not even 30 years old at the time.
Yep.
And I just go up to the car, and John told me, what was the cat's name? Junior.
Oh, it was a Junior paint.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, that's a Junior car. He knew.
So back in the day, there was this dude, Junior Conway, if I'm remembering the name correctly, had his shop, Junior's House of Color.
Yep, that was it. Yep.
Back in the day, he charged $64,000 for a paint job or more.
When everybody else was charging 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like you could walk up to the thing and just kind of go, okay, there's 2 hairs out of place. Let me get my comb.
It was unbelievable.
Yes.
So I walked up to the car, and he was there polishing the car, and John pointed him out to me because John was there at the show field. And I was like, do you know who did that car? And yeah, that was a Junior car. And we're in the same class, so he's only a couple cars down from us. And he's an older gentleman at the time, and he's got his little, hat on and his, polo shirt, and he's wiping off the car. And I go, I just want to tell you, this is just amazing. I was like, we brought that yellow car. I painted that. And he was complimentary. Yep. Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's very nice. Not anywhere close to his standard. Not even close. And I said, well, how do you do it? How do you get a car to look like that? I hadn't learned any techniques other than just, what you learn in a collision repair shop.
Yep.
And he's like, all I can tell you is you're going to be sanding a lot with 800 grit. And he wouldn't tell me a lot more than that. I mean, what's he going to give me? School me on how to do body work on but that was interesting. And when I came back to Wisconsin, tail between my legs, because unfortunately our car ignition.
I remember it.
I should tell this story.
Go for it. Yeah.
Because this is still, I'm just green and, made a lot of mistakes. And
the owner was green too. He was friggin' sweating bullets, just like, bud, calm down.
And like I said, very high strung.
Yes.
Just very on edge. And like, Matt, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. And, he's blades of grass on the tire. Just blades of grass on the tires. And I'm like, oh, man. And he had me all worked up.
So I'm just going to interject here for a moment. Blades of grass on the tires. In 1993, we did a Lamborghini class. One of the exhibitors came up to me and said, do you guys take off for blades of grass on the tires? And I looked at the exhibitor and said, if I saw one of my judges doing that, I'd fire him on the spot.
Yeah, I would hope so.
You don't do that. It's a friggin' car. It's driving across grass. There are these things called blades. Sometimes they get on tires, particularly when it's a little moist in the morning.
Right, definitely, which it always
You're
is.
fired. Anyhow, continue, please.
Well, so he had me pretty worked up. We got out there early, and we had spent the whole day before detailing on this car. And a good friend of ours, Scott Grunfor,
Fantastic restorer.
He's at the top of the game at the time. I'm just way down here, and so he gives me a little advice. Our engine bay really wasn't up to snuff.
Yep.
Right. And he gives me a little advice. He's like, you take this, I think it's called McGuire's vinyl and rubber cleaner. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he says, you can take that and spray it around, just kind of wipe it on things. And it leaves a perfect, he says, it doesn't look shiny. It doesn't look dull. It just makes it look perfect and clean. And so we did that. We sprayed it around. Oh man, it looks so good. And, but there was a problem with that. Mark got a little carried away, and he got it in his fuse box. Didn't cause us any issues at the time. Okay, car still fired up and ran. Blah blah blah. We take it out on the show field, and everything's getting detailed. He's like, Matt, the gauges are acting weird. Like the needles are. I can't remember exactly what it was, Winston. But anyway, so I get in there and I turn on the key just to see what he's talking about. And he's like, Matt, I'm not in the car for 2 seconds. Matt, come look at this. I got out and left the key on. Oops. First mistake. Oops. Actually, it's probably like the third mistake. The first mistake was using a Pertronix ignition in the car, which is inside the electronic ignition inside the distributor cap. I do not use those anymore. There's a lot of reasons that this is not interesting for this podcast.
I'm surprised you're not wearing a T-shirt that says "Oops."
Yeah, right. So I left the ignition key on, so this Pertronic ignition was hot. It's not, not like a points ignition where you leave the key on. It's no big deal unless it's in a certain configuration. And so about 10 more minutes, so he's like, "There's smoke coming out from under the engine bay," and sure enough, the key was on. It was just the ignition, the Pertronix ignition had melted inside the distributor, and the car wasn't going to run then. So that was my first year at Pebble Beach.
Yes.
We trailered it off the field, stuck it in the car, and I drove all the way back to Wisconsin by myself with it.
Yeah, welcome to the big leagues. And, oh my God, there's so many crazy stories about when guys bring cars to Pebble. It was one of my first years judging. It might have been the first year judging where a guy flew over from Switzerland, the one-off Aston Martin DB4 Jet. And I remember my judges come up to me. I walked by it, and the judges come up to me, and they're like, "This dude's really freaking nervous. You got to come over here and calm him down." My first year at Pebble as a chief class judge, I was 31 years old. So I'm this pissant kid, just like you, trying to figure out, how do you make this whole thing work? But man, it was fun. So I go on over there. The guys take me up to the exhibit, and he says, "This dent in the door, ka-ging, on the passenger side, happened while it was in transport. What do you do?" And the guy's nervous as all get out. I can't penalize the guy for that. It's totally out of his control. I looked at my judging team. I said, "Judge the car as if that dent is not there. Judge the rest of the car as if that dent is not there." Car won the class.
I bet there were some angry people, though.
It was the best car. Outside the dent, that was the best car.
Did you get some pushback?
No, not one.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not one bit.
He deserve it if he was telling you the truth.
I would believe that.
Yeah, why would anybody bring a dented car?
Yeah,
why would they even put it in the trailer?
When you're starting to mess around at that level.
And it's happened. We broke a windshield one year in transport. It wasn't going to Pebble Beach, but it's happened.
Joy.
Excuse me.
Oh, God, then there was one year we had a dude named Paul Forbes. I don't know if you ever ran across him. He was this cat out of Southern California. Lived in a warehouse. Had like a dozen 250 PS.
The man was into shoes. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
He was a shoe collector.
Seriously?
Yeah.
All I remember was he had a dozen 250 Ferrari PF coupes in there.
Yep. And I was in his place there as in Costa Mesa.
That's correct.
I was in his place there. He had a Fiat 8V in there. He had a beautiful collection of like car parts that were like restored, like steering wheels and like carburetors and under glass. And the man slept in this.
Oh yeah.
In this car, I guess you would call it like
it's almost like a Quonset hut with these cars.
Well,
it was like
you see these where they build these car garage, these man cave garages now.
Yes.
Early version of one of those.
And it was, because this is when I knew that dude was totally into it. I went into the bathroom. What's next? What's the top book on the little table next to the toilet? The Illustrated Ferrari Buyer's Guide. That was his bathroom reading. I thought, okay, this cat's into it.
He was a big guy too. He's like 6'5".
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he only wore flip-flops anywhere he went. Didn't matter what he was doing.
Oh my God, the guy was total friggin' entertainment value.
Oh yeah, he's great. And he slept on a mat on the in the like where the office area would be there. He was character. But yeah, he had a wall. The reason why I remember this guy's name and I remember him so well is because he had a wall in this area, floor to ceiling, 12-foot ceiling, all shoes in the boxes, brand new. I like shoes. He said, I like shoes. He says, if I see shoes I like, I buy them and I put them up there.
That's pretty funny. God, now I'm starting to go a little bit off topic. We'll come on back. Because there was one time I was on social media. So what Paul was, before they were called this, he was a freaking sneakerhead. Because there was one time I was talking about markets on social and just some of the craziness that was going on in the car market and elsewhere. Oh, I know what it was. It was when some Kanye West shoes sold for several $100,000. And I just kind of went off, okay, what's up with friggin' this? Boom, I had a bunch of followers that were sneakerheads. I didn't know that. They started educating me on sneakers. And this is what was great is because my social media following, it's a bunch of into it people that are highly intelligent and really quite polite. We have very little belligerence or stupidity on it. And they gave me an education. I thanked them. I might not have agreed with everything they were saying, but I learned something. Okay, so back to your story after Pebble.
Right. Get back to the.
So how did you get to here?
So I get back from Pebble Beach. We fix the car. Bob Dempsey, my mentor, he helps us make the repairs properly so that'll never happen again. We lost our Pebble chance, but we got the car fixed. And Mark ended up taking it to, I think it was Meadowbrook, and did real well after that. And he had some success at a few other shows, and he got over it, and he was happy, and we stayed friends, and we did more work for him in the future. But what really I remember when I got back is if I'm going to be in this game, I got to figure it out.
Bingo. And there's a gentleman who had the exact same lesson, Bob Smith, one of the world's top Ferrari restorers. His first year, he went down there thinking his poop didn't stink. Bang, he got his head handed to him on a platter. And it was the exact same type of thing. Okay, I need to figure out how this works. He called the head judge. How does this work? The guy gave him the discourse. And with you, it was, what did you learn? How did you figure it out?
Well, so at the time, I'm not really getting a chance to work on a lot of great cars. And when I say great cars, like the cars we work on now, like some of the ones you see in the background here at the time. But I always had work. I never found myself without work because I was going to great lengths to make sure I delivered a product that was a good value to people.
Under promise and over deliver.
Right. And that's my whole business model was for the first 10 years of Streetworks. That's the whole thing.
Yep.
And so I would take and I particularly remember there was a guy that had a 67 Plymouth Barracuda, the fastback car.
Yep.
He had a big 440 in it. And he wanted to paint it. And he owned a repair shop in town, and he was a crazy guy. He's the kind of guy that was out drag racing at night and all that fun stuff. He's like, Matt, I'll pay you $6,000 if you can paint this car. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll paint it. $6,000 sounded great to me. I'm going to work on this car for like 6 weeks. And at the time, supplies weren't as expensive as they are now. So I'm only going to have like $500-$600 of supplies in this car. I'll paint it. Car was black. And so I started working on this car very fastidiously, very trying to figure out how can I make this car as straight as Junior's car was. And I was trying some different techniques.
Boy, and trying to do that with black.
Well, black was the ultimate challenge.
Yes.
And, at the time, I didn't realize how important metalwork was for something like this. I know now. But at the time, it was Bondo and primer. That's how you got things straight.
At the time.
At the time. And and I would work on it. I'd get all the gaps perfect. I'd set them all perfect. I'd block over the gaps. I'd bondo the gaps in, cut them out, get that car as straight as I possibly could, and just keep working on it and sanding on it and blocking on it. And my auto paint rep, I was telling him, I can't get this clear coat to not have orange peel in it, no matter how hard I work. And he's like, use single stage, because it's black.
Yeah.
He said, just use single stage. He says, you'll get all the orange peel out. And sure enough, he was right. I put single stage on it. Man, I got this car so straight and flat. I was so happy. I was so happy with how straight and flat this car was. But it's still, and it's not a Junior Conway car. I mean, It's not. And I have the eye now, which I really didn't have back then, where I can see Bondo in a car.
Yep.
If it's if it's painted, no matter how good they did the work, I just have the eye. I can see it in the car. Well, now if I saw that car now, after I did it, I'd probably be like, oh, geez, there's a lot of Bondo in that car. But at the time, I thought I did pretty good. And I kept working on that and working on techniques to get them better and better and better. I eventually came up with sanding blocks that we make here. This happened 15, 16 years ago that I did this. All of a sudden now there's these custom painters out there that are well known, like Charlie Hutton and a few of these guys that are real well known, that are using very similar sanding blocks to the ones I figured out 15, 16 years ago. And now they market them and sell them. So everybody kind of is onto this technique now. But I figured all this stuff out about how to block the paint after you're done, how to make it perfect. So there's no orange peel, how the paint's perfect. There's no ripples in the paint. When you look over body gaps, the light reflections don't change. As a judge, you and John probably look at that. I always look at that. The door's straight, but is the door straight to the quarter panel? Is the door straight to the fender? Does that line go straight down the car, or does it move?
There was a dude that I used to use in Southern California named Build a Car. And so like the two best guys were Junior Conway and Build a Car. Junior was more known for paint. Bill was known more for body work. And Bill used to do this trick. Oh, God, I'll never forget this. And this to me now, I would look at this as over-restoration. But he did this trick where he put a piece of paper between the door and the body, and he would open and close the door until it disturbed the paper, because then that meant the gap was as perfect as it could be. And that was like, holy friggin' Toledo, look at that. I would probably look at that when you have a pencil-thin door gap. That's just good. That's a little bit too much.
Right. And we do run into that problem. Every car has a parameter that you can set a door gap for.
Yes.
I would say like some of the early Ferraris, you can make those gaps so tight because of the way the doors open.
Mm-hmm.
In some cars, the way the doors open, you can't do that. We'd just do a lot of De Tomaso Mangustas. You can't make the gaps too tight, or they'll knock the paint off the edges. Just the way the doors open.
What do you got, 4 Mangustas in here right now?
Yeah, I think there are 4 in here right now, because there's the wreck in the back.
Yeah, and then there's the yellow one, the orange one, and then there's like one other floating.
There's one that's in process right now.
Got it. That's the one that's in primer.
Yeah, it's in primer. We're probably going to be painting it here in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Lots of block sanding to come.
So if you got good weirdness out here, here's a good weird dude to take care of your weirdness and do it right.
Right. We have over the years really gotten into those oddball cars for sure. A lot of them. Monteverdes.
Oh, yeah. So now I'm starting to jump around. So behind us here is, so we have a Jag SS100 here. And it's funny because I really don't, rightly or wrongly on my part, I really associate you more with post-war than pre-war.
We have not done any pre-war cars. This is the very first one.
What type of challenges does this thing present that a post-war car does not? Or is it the same?
We are lucky on this particular car because we are now masters at coach work.
Yes.
We can be on rival with any coach workshop in the country right now. So the aluminum work on that car, it's a no-brainer. We had to make the fenders. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff we had to do on it. So the coach work is not a challenge for us. On a pre-war car, coach work can be a challenge, but we got that. The problem we still have with pre-war cars is the inner structures of these cars. As you know, they have wooden inner structures.
Yes.
And that wood is so delicate and fragile, and the aluminum needs the wood, and the wood needs the aluminum to work.
Yep.
And the gaps and setting them all. This is really the first pre-war car we've done. We're lucky that the woodwork was done before we did it. We can do woodworking here, but our woodworking here is usually limited to making bucks and forms for making aluminum parts, not inner structures for cars.
Yeah. Okay. So then behind that, we have one of the 3D Shah of Persia Maserati 5000 GTs. Now, that's a rare piece.
Right, and that's right up our aisle. You know, we've done so many cars like that. The custom coachworked Italian cars. I mean, it's so easy for us now. When I remember 20 years ago, it was just, oh God, what do you do with this? You know, like I think I was telling you before, or about the John Ling Lancia. I couldn't even figure out how to weld in a hole. I'm like, what do you even do with this?
Yeah, let alone how to spell Lancia.
Yeah, right. I'd never even seen one or heard of one.
Yeah.
I thought it was so bizarre looking.
Yeah, Lancia. No, it's Lancia, young man.
Yep, exactly. But I remember it was so bizarre working when I saw it, and now I love them.
It's a fascinating mark, known for decades for their advances in technology.
Right. They're very interesting with their transaxles and their...
Yes, and the engines, the body construction, they might have been the first unibody construction back in the 1920s. It was the Dilambda was the model, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was just the passion of the Lancia family that really set the tone for the Marque.
Yeah. I'll tell you a fabulous story about a Lancia Flaminia Sport Zagato.
Nice piece.
Right. So we've been this is probably about 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Second invite to Pebble Beach. I'm much, much, much better now. I've been practicing much.
Prepped. You've been to the show.
Yes.
You know what it's like.
I know
you
the
have an
expectation.
idea of what it's like to be in the Super Bowl.
I have a client who is fully on board with making the car as good as you can get.
Yeah.
Very well-known collector in California contracted us to do this car. And that was all on John Ling's recommendation because we were still just a nobody.
Yeah.
Working in a 6,000-foot basement. And we were doing this car, and we got it really nice. I was really happy with this. The paint job was beautiful. The upholstery was great. Our longtime upholsterer did the upholstery in this one. It just fabulous upholsterer. And we got invited to Pebble Beach 2008 for the Lancia class.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we might have a pretty good chance with this because we have a Flaminia Sport Zagato, great looking car. Series 1, covered headlights.
Yep. Double bubble roof, I'm assuming.
Yep. And we did a great job. I'm still happy with that car. It set a record price when it got sold a few years later. But anyway, at the time now, I'm up to like a 5 or 6 man shop now. And these are growing pains, right? I brought a guy in who was supposedly a Lancia guy, kind of knew his carburetors and his mechanicals on Lancias, and came in from Philadelphia to help us. And one of the guys in the shop knew him. That's how that happened.
Okay.
And we brought him in. And in a Lancia, what made me think about this story is the unibody. It's kind of like a semi-unibody, kind of like a Chevy Camaro was. The unibody from the firewall back in the front was a bolted-on stub.
Yeah.
That's what this car was. And we're getting ready to go to Pebble Beach in just weeks. Man, we're down to the wire. And
the old Pebble Beach push.
Yep. Every time. Oh, every year. It doesn't matter how far along you are. It doesn't get done till the end. And the car is really far along. It's all painted. The motor's done. It's been test run. All we have to do is put the front stub in there, finish up some wiring, tie all the little bits and pieces together. Probably like 2 or 3 weeks worth of work. Shows maybe 6 weeks out. Gives us a few weeks to, nitpick drive, get everything kind of sorted out because we're going to do the drive this time. And these hillbillies, now I call them, put this stub in. They were going to just take it upon themselves to put the stub in. Go-getters, we're going to get this done. We don't need Matt around. And I don't know where I was or what I was doing, but they put this stub in. It didn't quite line up just right. And it's a 3-point stub. It had the radiator, the firewall, and then back under the floorboards is where this thing bolted in. And it didn't line up just quite right. So the one guy has the idea, what if we take a porta-power and we put it between these, because the front of the body had a unibody construction that held the body together. What if we put it between those two and we'll just open it up just a little bit so it bolts together? And the worst happened. The body ripped right underneath the grill. The body is completely ripped. So I came back to this. Okay, we're leaving for Pebble Beach. We have to finish this car. 6 weeks. And now I have to weld and repair the front end, repaint it, blend it perfectly, and then start over.
Good.
With the
Lord.
installation.
Yes.
That was quite the ordeal. I was very upset about that.
Degree in rocket science.
Probably the most upset I've ever been in the business when that happened.
Did you make it?
Yes, we did make it.
How did you do?
We won third in class.
Good for friggin' you after all that.
Yeah, I feel like we could have won too. The cars that won, I don't know. Everybody thinks they should win. Everybody is always upset if they don't win. But I look back on it now, and I still think there was something odd. The judges came over from Italy. They were special judges, and I don't know who they were. I don't remember. And I kind of asked them politely after the show, well, hey, why third place? What was your thought process? They said we painted the wrong color. They were very upset about the color we painted it because it wasn't in the Lancia chip book. So that's what did it to us. But it was a great color combination.
That's interesting because if it was not in the Lancia book of colors, I'm trying to think how I would have handled that. Because if it was in quotes, because it is period correct, but it's not period correct.
Period correct color. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and so that's what they told me.
Yeah,
who knows what the real reason was?
Yeah.
I mean, they had to have a reason to give us third place. That was the reason. So yeah, I was a little upset about that, but we did make it, and it was a good year. And the gentleman that had the car was very happy that he got third place because it was a very good combination, a very good class. The Nardi cars were there.
Oh, the Blu-rays.
Yeah,
yes.
they were beautiful cars.
Those things are bitching.
And there was a lot of great cars in the class,
Yes.
so I couldn't really complain too much. I was very happy. First trophy.
I kind of remember that now because I remember Jim Simpson is the guy that owns the Blu-rays.
Yeah.
And those things are really cool.
Well, Bruce Milner was the owner of the Zagato.
Okay.
And I know you know him.
Yes.
He's shown so many cars at Pebble and won so many trophies.
I've probably bought and sold 20 cars for that guy.
Yeah, he doesn't keep anything forever. He doesn't fall in love with his stuff.
Well, and the other thing is, oh God, I used to yank Bruce's chain on this. He never drives anything. Because there was one time, I forget what car it was, that I was trying to work the deal, and he was kind of giving me some flack about, I don't know if I'll fit in it. It's like,
when are you going to get it?
Bruce, you don't even drive the friggin' thing. What does it matter? And then he burst out laughing. He thought, you know what? You're right. And I think we did the deal anyhow.
Yeah, he's a New Zealander, and boy, is he just great. He's just one of the best people you'd ever meet.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And shout out to Kathy, his
Oh,
wife.
wonderful,
Yeah.
too. Yeah. And from there, then we really started stepping it up after that car.
So was that kind of if for lack of a better term, a quantum leap from hot rods, muscle cars over to now European Exotica?
Yeah, we started doing more. Bruce became a client.
Mm-hmm.
He was very happy with us. He became a client. We still had John, and we still had a few coming from here and there from a few other people. There's a gentleman out in Boston. I believe his name was Gary Prime, and he was a CEO of a battery company. Had very wealthy. Loved Italian cars.
Yep.
We did several launches for him. Several.
Nice.
And he was a great client. And so it really did start channeling down to, well, I'm going to be an Italian restoration shop or exotic car restoration shop because we do a lot of German and English stuff too. So it really did start sending us down that direction at that point. And I wasn't having to do the $300 Triumph quarter panel paint jobs anymore. And we became in demand then. People were starting to call us. And people would still call John and say, boy, I got this Fossil Vega or whatever it is, and I just don't know what to do with it. Nobody will work on it. And John was like, well, these guys out here. And then they call me and they talk to me a little bit, and we'd set it up and they send the car out,
For me, there's a couple things that differentiate your shop from a lot of them. Is number one, you do it on time. There's not that many. There some of the big boys do that, but there's a lot that don't.
Well, I do have to be completely honest and say it hasn't always been that way. But it was very challenging in the early years. Undermanned.
Yes.
I couldn't pay employees very well. I couldn't keep employees because of that. I wasn't offering health insurance. That makes it hard, because guys want to work in a place like this.
And gals too.
Yeah,
You've got that African American gal that's in here.
And, we have several. We've had several girls, and she's very good, by the way, Courtney. I spent years training her how to paint and to paint detail, and she's very
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah, she's very good. She's one of the best that work here for paint and detail and everything. But I had to figure out, people want to bring their cars here, right? People are willing to pay to bring their cars here.
Yep.
I got to get out of this mindset of I can only charge these people $10,000 to paint a car, and that means I can only pay Bob $10 an hour to work here, and I'm just making up numbers. But I got to get out of this mindset, or I was broke, Winston. I lived in a hovel. Yep. This was before I got married. I drove garbage cars. I had nothing. I was just a vagabond.
Yeah.
And I had to figure this out, or this wasn't working out for me. I couldn't live the rest of my life like this. And at some point, I was just like, let's start doing this and charging for it. If we spend 4 hours on this, we're charging 4 hours.
That's a typical thing with restoration shops. A lot of businesses is where you want to help the client out, give them a bit of a break, but then just
and you want them to say good things about you, and you think by doing favors for them, they're going to say good things about you. You know what makes them say good things about you?
You do it
doing
right.
the work right, providing it in a timely basis, and fulfilling your obligations to the client.
Yes.
And then they need to fulfill their obligations to us by paying us when we need to get paid.
Yes.
And then it's a great relationship. And you're right. We can get a car to you. If I say we can restore your car in 18 months, we make sure we can. And if we can't, they're damn well going to know why.
Yeah.
And if they're an active participant in the restoration with us, that is, we send you a bill, you pay it. That's your obligation to us. Then we can do it. And we can deliver the best product in the world right now. I'm not saying we're the best shop in the world by any means, but I don't think there's anybody better. I think we can compete with any other buddy that restores a car right now.
And you're basically right, because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you were second in class in the East, so class in that. You were going up against some good competition.
Well, we weren't, you can't beat a prototype car with a production car. I don't care how good a car you bring. That's very difficult.
And then I think the year after that, you won your class.
We won, the Lincoln class.
Yeah.
The next year. Yeah.
Oh, that's the Lincoln out here.
Yeah.
That's a nice piece.
Oh yeah, it's about as nice as you'll see one.
Yes, but the other thing that I really appreciate about your guys' work, and this is hard because now we're going exactly against what we were talking about with Junior Conway, is that's over the top. And there was a period where you did that at Pebble, where it was the over the top stuff rather than original. 1998, Sergio Scaglietti and I were walking the show field together. He was the featured guest there. We had 3 classes of Scaglietti cars, if I'm remembering correctly. And after about the 4th car, he looked at me with admiration and said, "We never made them like that." Right. And that's the problem, is a lot of the restoration game was getting too far away from what they were originally. And what I like about your guys' work is you do it, it's like you do it over the top, but you don't do it over the top. You guys have restraint. And it's dialed back a little bit. And that, for my eye, and I think with a lot of my judges, makes a huge bit of difference.
I agree, because it just depends on the car too. You have to look at what car you're restoring. How do I restore this car? And I know we're kind of getting to where we're going to wrap up here, but the ESO A3C we just finished restoring, you can't over restore that car. It ain't going to look right. You'll see all the Bondo in it, all the rivets. I know guys are gluing rivets into those cars now when they restore them, so that they don't have dimples, or so that they can paint the car and buff it perfectly, then glue the rivets in. I know people are doing that. We did that car perfectly and originally, and it looks beautiful.
It's and then you get the other thing about applied patina, if we want to go the other way. I mean, how freaking warped is that?
Don't get me involved.
What else we have interesting in the shop here? It's
there's a lot of interesting things in the shop. Upcoming, we're going to be doing a Ferrari Superfast for a gentleman in Florida. That's probably the next big project, because we do have the 5000 GT back there, which is going to take a lot of investment.
Oh yes,
mentally and emotionally, to get that car to where it needs to be.
And when it's one of 3, and then trying to find period photographs and period information.
Right.
Yeah, that just in research alone.
And so now we're becoming Maserati 5000 experts, and that's kind of what happens. If there's 3 Maserati 5000 Gias,
Touring,
Tourings, there's really no expert on them. So you got to, you're not going to be like, who do I send it to the expert? Well, we've restored Sebrings and,
Ghiblis, Mexicos,
Ghiblis and all those Maseratis. And so I guess, we know about as much about Maseratis as you can know, but now this motor is completely different. You got to kind of, educate yourself on everything.
Oh, yes. If there was something, what's your dream car to restore that you haven't restored?
I always, we've restored Bizzarinis and stuff like that. Those are my favorite car, Italian car. But, I love like 250 short wheelbase Ferraris and stuff like that. Any of those. I don't have any particular one that I just love to have in here, Anything that's one-off, oddball. We were talking about the ISO Griffo convertible.
The Spider.
How amazing would that be? The Spider to have in here. I mean, those kind of cars. Those all trip my trigger. I love them. I love all the cars. We treat every car equally. We spend every ounce to make every car the same. That with the same attention to every one. But yeah, I just love those one-off kind of things.
That's actually a good point because you guys do have a real uniformity of work. When I go through here, and I've seen some of your cars, it shows. I've judged them, and I've just seen them as a spectator. And yeah, your cars have a certain quality to them that sure resonates with me.
Thank you. And I've heard some other restorers come up to me and compliment, well-known restorers, not just some guy that says I'm a restorer.
Perfect example is the LP 400S Countach that you did.
Right.
I mean, when you guys picked the color on that bronze with the interior, it's may not have been the original color to the car, but it was an original color to Lamborghini, right. And it was a friggin' knockout.
You just can't pick a better color on that car.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I know we're going to be seeing you show it off a little bit.
Oh, yes. So we've been up here the past several days doing this fantastic film where it's a Lamborghini retrospective, like I think we were talking about earlier, with a new Revuelto coming out. How did Lamborghini get to this point? Matt and then his client, Steve, have just been awesome. Steve opened up his collection to us. Guys, did we have some fun?
I did.
Guys, we had some fun. It's that was a treat. It's been a treat spending time with you guys, and you've really been helpful. But I think we're going to do later today. I want to do a walk around the shop.
Yeah,
where we just go talk cars and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we enjoyed hosting you guys.
No, it's been absolutely awesome. So if you're looking for someone out there to do good quality work, do it on time, this, that, and the other thing, it's Streetwork Exotics. Name of the town is?
Pewaukee, Wisconsin.
Website is?
Streetworksexotics. Or
Streetwork. .net. Something.
Type in Streetworks Exotics. It'll come up.
Perfect. We really appreciate you guys joining us, and we look forward to seeing you either at home or on our next road trip.